Hi, my name is Matthew Loux. I'm a cartoonist and creator of comics. I'm here with my newest book, Prunella and the Cursed Skull Ring. And also with me is Abby Denson.
Hi, I'm Abby Denson. I'm also a cartoonist, and my latest book is Kitty Sweet Tooth Makes a Movie, illustrated by Udamaru, and also Uniquely Japan, illustrated by me, and that is about different Japanese cultural topics. So we're going to be doing an interview with each other, and I guess I could start and interview Matt.
Sure.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your art background?
Sure. So I have lived in the New York area for almost 20 years. I went to school at School of Visual Arts, where they have a pretty well-known cartooning department, which I actually did not enroll in. I was illustration. I've been doing comics since the early aughts. The first couple of books I did were with Oni Press, and then about 10 years ago I started doing books with First Second, which is a division of Macmillan. I do a series called The Time Museum, which is kind of like a fun, all-ages time travel adventure, kind of like Doctor Who, a little bit more silly like that, but with some really fun, epic stuff. And then my newest book, Prunella and the Cursed Skull Ring, is my first fully painted graphic novel, about 160 pages. I hand painted with watercolor every single page. It's very much like a Ghibli-inspired, my kind of a fantasy take on a fairy tale. The story is about a girl who is digging in her garden, and she finds a ring in the shape of a skull. And when she puts it on, it turns her magically into a skeleton monster, and then she can't take it off. Now, her village, who is very intolerant of monsters, and they hate monsters, they actually kick her out without even asking any questions, so she's alone in the woods. And then she actually finds real monsters, but then finds out they're actually really nice, and they're actually really helpful, very cool, and very unique and interesting, and a lot of them come together to help her out, to try to figure out a way to break the curse and bring her back into a human.
Great. So how was the process of working with watercolor different from your creative process on your earlier books, like in the Time Museum?
It was different. I still inked by hand all of my other stuff, and I did this by hand also, but it differed because of the paper was different. I had to figure out a good paper that worked really well for both inking by hand and painting by hand. So it definitely took longer. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of work, as you might expect. If you make a mistake, it's a lot harder to fix because you're not doing digital coloring. And that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you. So the process, so this is the sequel, Kitty Sweet Tooth Makes a Movie, is the sequel to the Kitty Sweet Tooth books. And the process for you was a bit different too. You're an artist and writer, but this was the first time in a while that you were just the writer and collaborated with a Japanese artist. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I collaborated with Udamaru, who's an amazing Tokyo-based illustrator. She also is the character designer for the anime Mute King, which you can actually check out on Funimation if you want to see her stuff. So she illustrated the series Kitty Sweet Tooth, and now Kitty Sweet Tooth Makes a Movie. And our process is I write a script, and also I did like my own design of the characters and showed it to her. And she did her amazing takes on the characters with her gorgeous character design work. And basically I wrote a script. It's not unlike a screenplay. I sent her the script, and I described what should happen in each panel, but a lot of times, she puts her own spin on it that's so gorgeous and detailed, and also, sometimes I have a very specific scene visually in mind, but a lot of the time, Udamaru will just go with it and run with whatever I described and make it really amazing and beautiful. And then for book 2, this is more of an action story than the first one, and it has a transforming vehicle. So one of the things I got excited about was designing the vehicles with Udamaru. So I was giving her inspiration like Akira Toriyama and Chris Foss, just giving her different ideas. But of course, she made these really fun vehicles with her own spin on it, and it was great.
Well, the thing that I really loved about both of your books is that the stories are actually very different. the first story is really great, and it's very focuses on the movie theater and renovating this really cool movie theater in these exciting ways. In the second one, she's making her own movie, so it's a completely different story. What made you want to do that?
Yes, so to get more into the storyline, so Kitty Sweet Tooth is this cute purple cat who, with the support of her friends, manages, and her grandfather manages an amazing movie theater where she curates and programs B-movies along with these magical desserts that the witch and not mad scientists that are her friends create. So in book 2, she decides to direct her own movie with the help of her friends, and it's a really big adventure where it goes underwater, they go into outer space, they go into the mountains, they go into the desert, so all kinds of fun stuff happens, and it kind of I got to open up the world a lot, because in the first book it's more about the town and the theater, and the second one's they're going all over the place trying to create a movie. Thank you. And I wanted to ask you for Prunella, the storyline, it has a kind of, I'd say, socially relevant angle where, you have this girl who is, kicked out of her town for being a monster, and how she learned the monsters are not as bad as what everybody thought. Can you, describe a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, the kind of, it was a story angle that really evolved, because my original idea was just about the adventures of a girl going to different, monster tribes, which she does, but it just kind of, I don't think it's just because of the environment, the world environment these days, but it just kind of naturally felt like it kind of took a bit of a kind of a moral standing, not to get too into the weeds, but it just fit that she comes from a town that really hates monsters. They have a big wall, they're really scared of them, they've never even seen monsters, but they just are. She's kind of indifferent, to be honest. She never knew any other way of living or any other way of hearing these things, but she finds this ring in her garden, and then it just suddenly turns her into the thing that everybody in her town hates. And without any questions, they just kick her right out. So it's kind of like a revelation, a natural revelation for her. When she finally does actually run into other monsters in the forest, there's a town called Cedarton, which is so much fun to paint. And I wish I had actually spent more time in that outside town, because I was able to really get into the beautiful details of the forest, the lights, the different monster characters that are just having a good time, enjoying the regular day, not even really having any regard that there's a human town nearby that doesn't even like them. And that's where she starts meeting these really interesting characters. She meets a character called Captain Rip, who's a skeleton pirate. There's a giant, kind of Oni, one-eyed blue monster who runs a restaurant, and she ends up helping out at this restaurant at one point. A lot of that, of course, is kind of inspired by our trips to Japan. We've gone to a lot of really cool, little izakayas, and really cool, little food streets in Tokyo and all over Japan. And the cooler, uneven, older, ones that we've found, very much inspired quite a bit of a lot of the locations in the book visually.
That's some of my favorite. This book is definitely the most gorgeous book that Matt has ever illustrated, but it is always really detailed watercolor, and if you want to see a monster izakaya, or just the gorgeous woods with what look kind of lights and will-o-wisps going through, it's very Ghibli inspired. If you like that kind of illustration, you definitely will love Prunella.
Yeah, I was definitely inspired by kind of specifically the watercolor storyboards, or not quite storyboards, the watercolor idea boards that Miyazaki specifically did for a lot of his movies. And they're just so atmospheric, and he's just able to just completely nail what color brings out a mood, and brings out a feeling of a scene. And there are a lot of books published of his work here at Kinokuniya that you can get, and they're really great. It's really wonderful to watch, to look at them. So without like ripping it off, I definitely was looking at that to kind of like, that's kind of like what you want to shoot for in a watercolor to kind of get that mood. So yeah, that was definitely inspiration for sure.
Fantastic.
So let's talk about your actual collaboration, like the nitty-gritty of collaborating with an amazingly talented artist who lives on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you guys did that.
It's definitely technology. Thanks to technology. We did a lot of chatting. We do a lot of chatting, whether it's like Facebook Messenger or GChat. Or
Do you want to talk about how you guys met?
Oh yeah, so Udomaru and I met in person in Tokyo for the first time. So I go to Japan pretty often. You might be aware of my other books, like Cool Japan Guide, Cool Tokyo Guide. And often I just like checking out different places in Tokyo. And I love B-movies, which you could tell from Kitty Sweet Tooth, but also classic horror movies. So there's a movie themed bar called Cambiare, which is based on the movie Suspiria, or inspired by that. So I got Matt to go with me and went with some friends, and that night met Udomaru just kind of randomly. She was hanging out there, and we became friends, and we kept up a friendship online. And when I wanted to pitch Kitty Sweet Tooth with a collaborating artist, she was like my dream artist. And amazingly, I asked her, and she said yes. We worked on the pitch, and it worked, and it's been amazing. We have 2 books out now, so I'm really happy. It's really grateful it worked out, and really lucky to have a collaborator like Udomaru. She's a total genius.
And this was her, the first one was her first comic, right?
Yeah, she hadn't really done too much in the comic format. She was more of doing illustrations, designs, and character designs. So kind of neat where I got to, talk with her about the formatting of comics and doing the panels, and but she picked it up really fast. It was like totally natural. So I felt like I rarely had to like give notes on things ever. She's really great.
Yeah, I do wonder if like there's definitely more of a culture growing up of comic reading in Japan. I wonder if like that kind of she had grown up reading comics, so that kind of helped. She was a little bit more prepared.
It might be because I think she was a very natural storyteller, and she probably didn't get to do that as much just when doing still illustrations. That's a good question. Yeah, do you have anything else you would like to say to the Kinokuniya viewership?
Well, it was like, this book was like a long time coming for me. Like when I was in school at School of Visual Arts here in Manhattan, I kind of grew up loving art, painted. There's like a few painted books that were really inspirational to me, like Alex Ross's work, of course. Like I loved his work in college. I had other friends that were really excellent painters. There's a book called The Wrenchies that Farrell Dalrymple did. He's actually an old friend of mine who went to school with, and he has this gorgeous, like 300-page fully painted book. And there are a bunch of others, and I just always wanted to do something that felt more like a traditional children's book, and kind of merging a traditional kind of children's book, not only just the look of the painting, but the feel of the story being kind of like fantasy, but not like wars happening like in Lord of the Rings or anything, or like and also just like so like kind of like merging comics with that old traditional children's book kind of style was sort of what I was going for. Yeah, it was a pleasure to do. It was really fun. It took me way too long, but it was like and it printed really well, and it's being received really well. We're having a lot of fun going around and talking about our books, and yeah.
Great. And I would like to say, I love Kinokuniya. Thank you for your support.
Yep, we definitely want to thank Kinokuniya. They've always supported us for as long as we've been doing comics, and we love the store and everybody that works here. So.
Yeah, and I've had the rare joy of getting to sign at Kinokuniya in Tokyo and in New York. So I've done both, and I hope to do it again in Tokyo. Hopefully to see you there next year. And also, again, since Japan has reopened, you really should check out Uniquely Japan and My Cool Japan and local Tokyo guys.
Yeah, definitely come down here to Kinokuniya's in the New York area to get all the stuff you need to prepare for your trips. Now that we can finally go back to Japan.
Yes,
It's
yes.
the perfect place.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.